Hey, podcast listeners, it's Ria Wong with you with Nonprofit Lowdown. Today, I have a very special guest. All right, let me start that again. Hey, podcast listeners, it's Ria Wong with you with Nonprofit Lowdown. Today, I have a very special guest, Meghana Gunturi, who is a junior in California. And today, we are going to be talking about tapping into the power of Gen Z. So, Meghana actually emailed me out of the blue, and I was so impressed with this young lady that I had to invite her on to the pod. So, Meghana, welcome.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, and I know you said you were a longtime listener to the podcast. So before we jump into all of the details about your generation, tell us a little bit about yourself and why is it that you reached out to me?
Well, I am currently a high school student and I am very involved with my academics and my campus. I'm president of 4 clubs and I reach about 400 people on our campus just through my clubs. But I really wanted to start branching out, even outside of school. And at the end of 2021, I filed for a nonprofit, my nonprofit Neurodiversity Horizons. And with this nonprofit, I aim to make the world a better place for neurodiverse people, which is like autism, dyslexia, ADHD, and a lot of stuff like that. And I really didn't know how to grow it or where to start. It just seemed like a really overwhelming process. My heart was in the right place, but I did not know where to start at all. And so I kind of started listening to people who have done this for a long time, people who might be able to offer any advice. And I came across your podcast, and all your guests are people who have overcome certain barriers. All your guests are people who have really, really inspirational stories to share. And through listening to their lessons and their accomplishments, I was really inspired, first of all. And second of all, I was able to put my head in the right place to grow my nonprofit. And so from there, as far as accomplishments and milestones, we now have 22 international chapters in 8 countries, have reached over 10,000 people with our social media, website, and events, and have an outreach of 275,000 people and 8 divisions of our nonprofit, and even have an amazing board of a little over 20 people. And I even got into hosting events based on the advice that I received from the nonprofit or from the podcast. And we hosted a summer program with over 80 accepted members joining from all over the world, like Singapore, Korea, India. And yeah, so I really was able to gain a lot of insight on how to positively impact the world in a more streamlined manner.
That is awesome. And Meghana, how old are you again?
16.
That's incredible. You're 16. I don't even know if you can drive yet, but here you are launching this international nonprofit. It's so inspiring. So tell us a little bit about your nonprofit journey. I mean, I know you've been doing this for a little while. What are some of the most valuable things you've learned about running a nonprofit, either from my podcast or just doing it or other sources that you found?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things I learned through your podcast and resources, as well as other collaborations and people I've learned from, was perseverance. Like listening to other leaders share their story, I got a little glimpse into the value that fighting past obstacles and barriers can have on the success of a nonprofit. And this also kind of leads me into another lesson, which is that challenges are inevitable and will occur regardless of how good your intentions may be. But it's important to be upfront about these challenges. I think we need to eliminate the idea that it is embarrassing to have like a month where your followers are at an all-time low or a time where your funds aren't so high. It's okay to have like the challenges and obstacles, but it's important to be upfront about it. One thing is that I used to take it as a threat to my leadership to have bad months or to have challenges or lack of participation. But through your resources and also my own lessons I learned along the way, I quickly learned that sharing the problems openly with my board, with donors, and more got me more support than hiding it and considering it embarrassing. So definitely communication is key and keeping people updated on what's going on for my sake and for the nonprofit's sake.
I mean, Meghana, that is just such a wise lesson that you're learning at 16. That's really going to be helpful for you as you continue on in your career. So, talk a little bit about your fundraising, because as you know, it's Nonprofit Lowdown. We like to talk about fundraising. What was your strategy for fundraising, and how have you gone about it?
Yeah, so one of the things I did was I have a social media campaign that I run separate from my nonprofit called Stand for Neurodiversity. And it's essentially a online platform that we use to raise awareness and promote educational topics in regards to neurodiversity and taking down that negative stigma around it. And so through this, we have been able to accumulate a large following as well as create a lot of impressions by ending up on like discover pages and fundraiser pages that Instagram has. And through that, I posted my fundraisers and I posted links that we were promoting. And through that, hold on, I'm gonna do this sentence again. So I posted on our social media about fundraisers that we had, and I posted about a project that we were doing called Operation Autism Comfort, which is where we aimed to create therapy kits for autism and send them to people all across the world. But of course, that does require funding. So we started a GoFundMe page and posted about it on Instagram, and it received quite a bit of support and traction by posting TikToks about it, by posting Instagram posts, stories, and by sharing it through DMs with other people. We were able to gain a lot of traction and a lot of donations. And on top of that, we did do some grant applications in which our nonprofit and social media campaign came in handy for establishing credibility, especially with the age playing a factor into our grant and application. And through that, we were actually able to send out 120 autism therapy kits to places like Australia, South Africa, wellness centers, and all types of like colleges and autism schools. And so definitely social media played a huge role in our fundraising, and also just working with other people, working with team members, helping others fundraise will also give you good connections in terms of having them help you fundraise for your own projects.
So, I also just want everyone listening to you to hear this. So, you are 16 years old, you're a junior in high school, you go to school full time, you're the head running four different clubs, and you're raising money for this nonprofit. Do you sleep? Wait, how do you do all of it?
Yeah, so honestly, my nonprofit work doesn't really feel like work because I really, really enjoy doing it. So school is the hard part, and then I can kind of unwind by doing this type of work. It's kind of like reading. Like although reading seems like it is not a fun thing, and it's like it's not like watching TV or something, a lot of people consider a stress relief. So that is kind of like what my club leadership and nonprofit leadership is like to me.
Oh, the energy of a 16-year-old. I wish I could bottle it up. Wait, so before we get into the other details about your generation, tell us a little bit about why you started this particular nonprofit. I know you have a personal connection to it, so I think that'd be important for folks to know.
Yeah, so I have a younger cousin who, prior to receiving her diagnosis, had a lot of mannerisms that resembled autism. And unfortunately, my family members did not really know about autism or did not know what it was. And of course, she didn't have a diagnosis to back it up either. And so it just ended up in a lot of really toxic behavior, kind of punishing her for things that weren't her fault. And she's only like 4 or 5 years old at the time. And so she just ended up facing a lot of toxic behavior. And I saw that as a 4 year old or 5 year old, she was going inward and not able to communicate her problems. And I felt like that was the opposite of what adults in her life should have been doing. And so once I kind of told them that it's like, it's okay if she doesn't want to do a certain thing, it's okay if she doesn't want to hear a certain sound, watch a certain show, like it just because it's considered the norm in the household doesn't mean that she has to follow it. And through that, they kind of took her to a speech therapist and from there received her diagnosis for autism. And from there, the family realized kind of how bad their behavior was. But it was only after they realized that she had autism and kind of like this seeming like medical diagnosis to back it up. And so it kind of dawned on me that the lack of awareness that people can think differently was causing a lot of problems, and that the only reason she received support was because her family had a medical diagnosis or something to attribute the behavior to. And so I really wanted to figure out a way to first raise awareness that neurodiverse conditions exist because they didn't even know that it was a thing that she could have been experiencing. And then I also wanted to create the idea that it's okay to not be exactly how the everyday person that you see is. It's okay to maybe not be so good at math, but be super good at English, or maybe to not be good at math or English. It is totally okay to be thinking differently from people in your everyday classrooms, and that we don't need to go out of our way to make lives more difficult for people who already are struggling to have their voice heard in society. And so that was definitely my personal connection to it. And taking advice from podcasts like this, and also reaching out to people I knew who were retired and like running 3 nonprofits, and their experience helped me grow the passion and the mindset into an actual change.
Very cool. So, Meghana, folks like me, I'm Gen X, we have millennials, but you are Gen Z, which is so funny to say. But what is it that you think that people who are a little bit older, shall we say, should know about people of your generation? Because what I've noticed is that your generation seems to be much more vocal, much more social activist minded, much more open to diversity. But tell me in your own words, like, what do you think that we should know about the people in your generation?
Yeah, definitely. I want adults to know that Gen Z is born and raised in social, political, and economical change. And that is what we're used to. For example, with COVID-19, protests, movements, and so much happening, our generation is already ready to take on some of the world's biggest problems. We already grew up in such unique circumstances. Using myself as an example, I missed my freshman year of high school to COVID. But these unique circumstances led to the beginnings of my desire for change. For example, with the lack of hospital visits that non-COVID patients had, I went out of my way to create my own app, which is a machine learning model trained to recognize skin diseases. And I kind of created this for people who aren't getting access to hospital visits because it was flooded with COVID patients. So these unique circumstances were my norm. And so I would attribute a huge part of my identity and leadership that Gen Z is raised in to the circumstances that we're in. Many Gen Zers have started initiatives, led clubs, lead global change, and speak on huge platforms, for example, like Greta Thunberg. And that is because that is our norm. We grew up in societal change with protests like BLM. It is our norm to see that on a daily basis. And so kind of going out of our way to start an initiative is really not that new or difficult to us. So that is definitely something I want adults to know.
Yeah, and it also seems to me that your generation are digital natives. Like you have not existed in a time before there was an internet. You are very comfortable, I assume, with social media platforms, TikTok, and so on, which is really different than say my generation because I think I was in high school when the internet came along. So, as nonprofit leaders are listening to this and thinking, Gen Z has so much to offer. What are some of the top 5 tips that you might offer to nonprofit leaders about how to tap into the power of Gen Z?
Yeah. So my first tip would be to reach out to student-led organizations. And I don't mean this in the way that they are going to be able to donate thousands to your organization or that their nonprofit will give you a huge leap in attention, but their passion is really unmatched. And a lot of us don't do this for a resume line or a popularity boost in society. We genuinely believe that there is a lot to be changed in the world and that age is really just a number. So a couple of nonprofits I know, for example, is STEM Up for Youth, which is who the founder is currently in their undergrad and is an alumni at my high school. And her nonprofit reached over 300,000 kids, bringing STEM education to underprivileged kids in the Southern California area. Another division of that is Gear Up for Youth, which was also started by a high school alumni at my school and has reached over 13,000 underserved girls in many different countries to close the gender gap in education. Another example is Deep Waste, which is a technology company with a mission to provide fast, accurate, and low-cost waste classification, which was started also by a high schooler. Another example is Everyone Deserves STEM, which is helping to expose free scientific opportunities to children around the world, who the founder is also doing their undergrad now, but started in high school. Also, my nonprofit and social media campaign Stand for Neurodiversity, and my nonprofit, Neurodiversity Horizons, has reached a lot of people, has started many chapters, has worked with everyone from ages 4 to 40. And so these are just like a couple of examples of how middle and high schoolers have made huge changes. And I think that anyone from Gen X or millennials with a little bit of research can find hundreds of more nonprofits that are led by people under 18.
Okay,
So,
so that's
yeah.
top tip one, which is find organizations or movements already led by youth. What are some other tips?
My next tip is to realize that collaboration is mutual. Although the student-led nonprofit has something to offer, it is important that the collaboration goes both ways and that adults allow their experiences and resources to grow the student-led nonprofit, leading to the phenomenon I've called for the past couple years co-elevation. So my third tip is to explore websites and Instagrams. Gen Zers take a lot of time to work on Instagram's website aesthetic and making sure that the information is all presentable and available just through the digital presence. So make sure to look at any online resources as Gen Z takes their digital presence and digital footprint really seriously. My fourth tip is to have idea sessions with any Gen Z nonprofit. If there is nothing about Gen Z, or if there is, sorry, I'm going to do that sentence again.
Go ahead.
My fourth tip is to have idea sessions with any Gen Z nonprofit. If there is something about Gen Z, is that we are part of several school clubs, nonprofits, and we really want to be involved, but just age and experience hold us back. So even if we aren't the most funded nonprofits compared to an adult who had been doing this for years, our ideas and creativity is rare and rare to find, especially for an adult that only works with adult-led nonprofits. Examples can be the neglect of virtual spaces and digital presence, reaching younger audiences, for example, like elementary school, creating engaging curriculums for what kids like nowadays, and so much more. These are really valuable to adult-led nonprofits. For example, with myself, I've worked with 3 separate companies this past summer to create a Discord space for their nonprofit, which allows them to reach a much larger platform. And they also were not familiar with Discord or virtual spaces altogether. And so me single-handedly creating it for them helped their nonprofits and their companies a lot. And my fifth and final tip is to not feel like the upper dog when working with a student-led nonprofit. It's important not to feel superior, and this is a problem I face a lot. For example, missing scheduled Zoom meetings, showing up 15 minutes late to scheduled events, replying months after an email that was sent during an ongoing collaboration, and a lot more. I think whatever you expect from a Gen Z nonprofit, an adult nonprofit should reciprocate as well.
So you're saying that people are not responding to you.
Yeah, so sometimes we'll schedule events
I
and
see.
they have no problem missing it and like attending 30 minutes late. And I guess it's because they feel like it would be my duty to just wait there for them.
I see. So like not taking you for granted, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a basic mutual common courtesy.
Yeah.
So, Meghana, as we think about leadership of your generation, what can nonprofits do, particularly as I think, your generation in a short amount of time will start to enter the workforce and we're going to have to start thinking about that next generation of leadership. What can nonprofits do right now to start to build that leadership pipeline?
Yeah, so similar to how I mentioned earlier, reaching out to nonprofits and just having a casual discussion of what both of you have to offer. So just like scheduling a Zoom call or a phone call just to bounce ideas. And if both parties are enthusiastic about the collaboration, something definitely great will come out of it. And by offering that advice as someone who has been in there for years and has been through a lot more than a high schooler or a college student can, that advice can take a motivated student a long way. So another thing like that would be offering advice similar to this nonprofit or similar to this podcast. This podcast, along with others, such as social entrepreneurs, awarepreneurs, the We Are for Good podcast, and also general advice that I've received from partners such as Neurodiversity Network, the Unicorn Children's Foundation, NERC, after school clubs, the Tilly's Life Center, elementary school teachers, and so much more have offered me so much valuable advice just over a Zoom call in terms of growing and expanding, receiving funds, reaching out to donors. And this was extremely helpful since I'm young, my nonprofit grew very organically, from the beginnings of a passion to some after school clubs, to some curriculums, to websites. But the advice that adults have offered me has taken me a long way.
So it sounds like as you're talking about your tips that technology plays a big part. I heard you mention Instagram, I heard you mention TikTok. What other platforms should adults be thinking about in order to reach folks in your generation?
Instagram. I cannot emphasize how much Instagram is a huge part of our lives. There is reels, there's posts, there's algorithms, hashtags, reposts, stories, and so many ways to easily reach thousands of accounts. This is the most used platform by our generation and has a lot to offer to any organization. So by just like following Instagram's protocols and the hashtags, you're bound to end up on someone's Discover page. And from there, the app really takes off with any message that you're trying to spread. It's how a lot of movements spread, such as Me Too, BLM, just by posting about it, a lot of popularity and funds have been gained through that app. Another avenue is TikTok. This is also extremely popular. Although there are too many videos on the app to guarantee popularity and too many people trying to, I guess, blow up on the app, it is still extremely useful and people will find you while they're relaxing and just like trying to spend some downtime on their phone. And everyone really loves to spend a lot of time relaxing, so you're definitely bound to end up on someone's page. Another thing is I would refrain from using things like Facebook and Twitter and other platforms that are not commonly used amongst our generation, because the growth, although might become big, it will definitely not reach Gen Z to the extent a nonprofit might desire. Social media is really important and should not be neglected by anyone, regardless of age. And if a nonprofit needs help maximizing social media potential, collaborating with a Gen Z nonprofit can definitely help.
Okay, let's talk about this, right? Because my main social media platform is LinkedIn, which I know is for old people, which is fine. But if I were, say, an executive director and I said, okay, Meghana, I want to make my Instagram page really exciting for Gen Z, what are the kinds of things that you might advise me?
The biggest thing is posting what you want as a message as your regular posts, but then finding other avenues to have your account itself reach more people. For example, with my social media campaign, although our educational posts may not be picked up by the algorithm as well as a reel or a TikTok that we repost, posting that TikTok gets our account on a lot of people's pages and gets us a lot of followers. And then from there, they're able to see the educational posts. So kind of dividing up the popularity aspect from the actual message aspect is really important. Staying consistent is the hardest part of social media and the most important part of social media. Staying consistent by consistently posting, consistently having stories, consistently keeping up with how many times a week that you post your reels to post ratio. These are things that are the hardest part about maintaining a social media, but will make your page the most valuable it can be to any type of positive message.
So break that down for me, Meghana. What is the difference between an educational post and a different post? Because it sounds like those are two different things. So what would be the other post that's not an educational post?
Yeah. So for example, my campaign, the aim is to take down the negative stigma, which realistically can only be done through posts that are very informational and have a lot of words on them, less pictures. with long captions talking about bullying and stuff that really will not keep the attention of a casual scroller. And that is where the followers become stagnant. But when we post things like memes or TikToks and things related to stuff like autism and neurodiversity, we're able to reach the neurodiverse crowd and have them follow our page. And then from there, our posts naturally end up on their feed just by the fact that they follow us.
So, Megan, does that mean that executive directors are having to post memes and reels and do dances? Is this what you're telling me?
They kind of do it in a different way from what I've seen, is that they do sponsorships with younger creators and have them promote their products so that way their page can stay as professional as possible. They kind of reach out to young Instagram popular people on the app. They reach out to TikTokers who are popular on the app, and they'll have them endorse a product like Invisalign or like Amazon, so that way the actual Invisalign or Amazon page can stay very professional.
So, what I hear you saying is engaging influencers, but have you seen that being done successfully for nonprofits? Because I've seen it with products, but I haven't necessarily seen it with nonprofits.
I have definitely seen it with nonprofits. The only thing is that the nonprofits would not be able to pay for a sponsorship, or it would not be ideal to pay for the sponsorship, which is where the value of the nonprofit plays a big role. So the the Good Samaritan part of your nonprofit will eventually get people to endorse the project. So for example, when we were trying to get funds for Operation Autism Comfort, we reached out to a fellow influencer that we knew that had 230,000 followers and another 200,000 on TikTok, and 230 on Instagram. And so we reached out to him and we asked him to promote this project because we were really, really trying to just raise funds for the expensive nature of autism therapy. And from there, he was able to promote the project and is a big reason why we received a lot of funds for that. So it is definitely possible for nonprofits, but making sure that you are familiar with your mission and know what you're doing it for would play a bigger role than just trying to pay a certain amount of money for someone to stand in an Instagram post with the product.
And what I hear you saying is that you didn't pay for it, because I think a lot of people are a little nervous about, like, I don't want to pay an influencer to. So how do you know which influencer might be the right one for you?
Yeah, so ones that we have connections with. And that's where the algorithm aspect of social media plays a big role. And that's where that growing your account from followers and making sure that you have a lot of impressions matters a lot, because from there you're able to reach more popular creators, and eventually like verified people will start following you, or people with a lot of like presence on various other apps like TikTok and even Facebook. They are able to recognize your account, and from there they're more likely to promote your project. And honestly, the connections that we have in terms of after growing our account and then reaching out to them after they're familiar with our account has been a foolproof method. I have yet to see it fail, in terms of once they're familiar and they know your cause, they are likely to promote a project, because for them, they will look at that Good Samaritan aspect of it more than the product placement and the brand deal look of it.
Oh my gosh, Megan, this sounds exhausting. Are you available for hire? If someone wanted to just hire you to do their social media.
I guess.
All right. Well, Megan, we are at the end of our interview. So the question I like to ask guests is, if you had a billboard, well, maybe in your case, if you had a TikTok or an Instagram to communicate anything to the world, what would be on your Instagram?
Definitely if or hold on, let me think about this for a second. Um, all right, so my message would definitely be, if you have an idea, if you have a passion to spread, don't hesitate from doing it, regardless of whatever barriers you feel are holding you back, whether it be a financial standing or a racial standing. I myself faced a lot of bullying in regards to racial related bullying, and kind of battling against that taught me that really nothing can hold you back. It's really just your mind at the end of the day. telling you what you can and can't do. So if you can fight against that urge to skip out on a project or hold back on a passion, you will be a lot more successful and you'll be able to see all your dreams come to a reality.
That is beautiful. And Megan, your parents must be so proud. How have they raised a kid like you?
Honestly, they are trying their best. I am a very overactive kid and have always been. Ever since I was a kid, I was always jumping off the walls. So they've just tried their best to keep me free-spirited and happy. And that has a lot to do with my character. I have a lot to owe to my parents for letting me be myself and keeping me true to myself and to always remember like their beginnings and my beginnings. And I have definitely a lot of my character and success to owe to them.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, if your parents are listening, I hope they are.
Mhm.
Congratulations, you've raised an exceptional young lady. We're very excited to see what the future brings and all of the ways that you're going to be changing the world. Meghana, if people wanted to get in touch with you, is Instagram the best way?
Instagram, yeah, definitely Instagram is the best way. As well as our website has a lot of contact information that is direct to me. It is neurodiversityhorizons.com. Reaching out to our email, reaching out to our Instagram, reaching out to any board members is a really, really great way to get in touch with me.
Great. And we'll make sure to put all of your information in the show notes for folks who are listening. But in the meantime, Meghana, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I think you are by far and away the youngest guest that we've ever had and possibly the most energetic.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here, and I am really thankful for this opportunity.
Well, and I just want to share with folks that you got invited to the podcast because you sent me an email. It was a cold email, and you pitched yourself. And I just want to say, especially for all of the young women of color out there, don't be afraid to pitch yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Putting yourself out there is really the only way that you can gain some respect and gain people's attention. Um, don't be afraid to be the manager, be the boss, tell people when they're doing something wrong because that is really how you're going to survive with big ambitions.
I love it. Be the boss, everyone. You heard it from Meghana. Heard it here first, people. All right, Meghana, I know it's late. I know you have some homework to do. So thank you so much. And have a great week, everyone.